Hello, my name is Eduardo Castillo. Thank you for joining me today. Today I'm going to be going over my action research paper in the form of this PowerPoint presentation. My action research paper was done on the McKinney-Vento impact in schools. With me today is Ms. Corona, who's been a school counselor for the last 5 years, and Ms. Dominguez, who's a recent graduate from National University in school psychology. Quick introduction of what the McKinney-Vento Act is. The program itself was implemented, or the act itself was implemented in 1987. And what the act is designed to do is it's designed to address challenges that homeless children and youth have faced in enrolling, attending, and succeeding in schools. Basically, the act was created to help those homeless students get on par with their non-homeless counterparts and helping them deal with barriers both inside school and outside of school. Quick data, the National Center of Homeless Education showed that in the 2017-2018 school year, more than 1.5 million students fell into the category of being homeless. And coming from experience, myself working with foster youth and homeless youth, those numbers are always underreported, and that could be for various reasons. Some of the reasons I've seen with families is that they're either embarrassed, they don't want to tell the schools their status, or they're afraid of having child services, CPS call them members and stuff like that, and having their children taken away because of their status. So from what I've seen, those numbers are always underreported. And then some more data from 49 states reported that homeless students had a graduation rate of 44 to 87%, and that's between 49 states. With the national average being 79%. So you guys can see some of the disparities, some of the big ranges in graduation rates for homeless students. Quick overview of the literature that I found on the subject. One of the biggest things I found in most of them was that there was two common things, or two common people in the schools that supported the homeless students, and that was the school counselors and then the homeless liaisons. One of the things also showed that, for obvious reasons, these students were always falling behind their peers as well academically, which in the schools, obviously the most important thing is their academics, right? We want them to graduate. One of the biggest reasons why they struggled a lot in school was because of absenteeism, and school mobility influenced their student success. So this is, for obvious reasons, one of the barriers that these students face is that they don't have a stable home life. So they're either going from shelter to shelter or from motel to motel. And 1 week they might be right next to the school, so they're in class most of the days. The next week they might be in a hotel, in a different city, and it's hard for them to get to school and stuff like that. So them not even getting them to school is one of the challenges that these students face. Because they're not in school, they're not in the classroom, they're not learning, and they're falling behind. Homeless students have higher rates of school victimization, depression, and suicidal ideation. Again, this is in dealing with the issues outside of the classroom for the student, which, as we'll see, it's one of the biggest things. It's hard for the students to succeed in the classroom when they have so much going on outside of the classroom. This is difficult for adults. So only imagine, with kids and teenagers in dealing with some of these outside issues. So it arises in some of, suicidalization and behavior and things like that. So two of the things that I found that over the last 30 years in the implementation of the McKinney-Vento Act was that something that helped was teaching mindfulness skills helps homeless students deal with stress and anger at a higher favorable outcome than their non-homeless counterparts. Okay, so this is like in small groups or one-on-one counseling. Like I said, these are kids, these are children, these are teenagers, and helping them how to deal with their emotions, to deal with some of the stuff going outside of the classroom really helps in helping them focus inside the classroom. 70% of participants reported making referrals to community resources. So this isn't talking with other school counselors. This was a study with school counselors. Most of them, while they do their one-on-one counseling or their group counselings, they found a lot of help came from outside of the school. So 70% of them reported making outside referrals to the community for help for the students. So my research question that was formed after going through the literature review was what is the school staff's perception of the impact McKinney-Vento's interventions have on students' academic success in the middle school setting? And this was done because for last school year, I was an intern at a middle school, so this is in seeing some of the students that I was working with. And then seeing what the teachers think about the McKinney-Vento Act in itself, and if they think it's actually helping the students. For the methodology, I did one questionnaire. It was a quantitative method to collect the data. So the questionnaire was composed of 11 questions. I sent it out to 20 members of staff in the school. It was sent out in the second to last week of school. I only got 7 responses from the 20, which wasn't too bad considering some of the what was going on. Again, this was like during the second to last school year. We had, the teachers had they had finals and other stuff going on, and as well, this was done during COVID. So I wasn't able to go and meet with the teachers. This was sent out through Google Docs and in a Google survey. So, and I'm gonna go over the questions and their responses in a minute. So the first question in the questionnaire was, I am aware of what the McKinney-Vento Act is and how it supports students. So as you guys can see, for all these, they're going to be color-coded and they're going to be the same, with the purple and the green being strongly agreed. So we want to see, for the most part, we want to see the purple and green because it shows that the teachers are aware of what the McKinney-Vento program is and what it does. So for this one, we had 14% say neutral. And again, this is, I think it's important that the teachers know what it is, because if they don't know what it is, then they don't know who does what and how it can help. So knowing what the McKinney-Vento Act is in itself and what it does for the students, I think it's important every school year. McKinney-Vento, second question, McKinney-Vento students are supported on our campus. Again, a majority of the teachers responded with agreed or strongly agreed, with a higher percentage than I thought, 28% saying neutral. Again, so this is important because it shows, just because you're aware of it doesn't necessarily mean you know what it does. So it's important that the teachers know how this act helps their students, whether it's in the classroom or outside of the classroom. Third question, I am aware of who the McKinney-Vento students are. This one was probably the most surprising answer or results that I saw, with 42, almost 43% showing neutral. And I thought this was interesting because to me, even though the school counselors and the homeless liaisons are there to support the students that fall under the act, I thought it was important that the teachers know who the students are. Like, for me, I always think, how can they, give that student that extra support needed if they don't even know who they are? So to me, this is kind of showed the biggest disconnect between the teachers and the act itself. I'm aware of school district resources offered to McKinney-Vento students. Again, this one caught me a little bit by surprise. Again, with the majority, 57% saying neutral. Again, and this for me, again, in the classroom, kind of going back to, being in the classroom. For example, if a student, if a teacher sees that a student might be, hungry, or that they're struggling with, with some outside resources, if the teacher doesn't know what's available to them or to the student, both inside the school and outside, it's going to be hard for them to, to recognize and be able to support that student with resources. One example I had, for example, this past school year, the school itself had a school fund for the McKinney-Vento students, a school fund, and this provided students that needed, book money or money for their for sports uniforms, or like school dances, recreational stuff like that. They had funds set aside for these students in particular. So stuff like this If the teachers don't know that that's out there for them, then they're not going to be able to help the students out, even for recreation, which goes a long way in helping these students, making them feel part of the school. I'm aware of community resources offered to McKinney-Vento students and families. So this is looking outside the school. Again, myself working with nonprofits outside of the school for the last couple of years, I know what our agencies and other agencies are able to do for students and schools and their families. So this to me is very important that the teachers know what's available to them, because although yes, we want the schools to be able to help them, we know in reality that's not the case, whether that's funding or whatever it is. The community has so many resources available to the students and their families, and I think it's important that the teachers and the staff know what's out there, and it's not just limited to the school, because there's so much more out there, whether that's money for buses, money for motels, money for uniforms, for books, things like that. The resources are available to students and their families outside of the school. So I think it's important that the teachers and staff know that these things are available to them when they're not available to them in the schools. I know who the school homeless liaison is and how to get in contact with them. So again, this one was one that caught me by surprise, with the majority either being neutral or disagreeing. And this to me was, again, very surprising, because I think this should be done in the beginning of the school year. When admin comes together with all the schools and they introduce themselves, introducing new staff, the homeless liaison should be one of the key people that's introduced and make sure that everybody knows who they are, their contact information, when they're available, when they're in school, if they're going to be, what days they're there. It's important for them to know, because again, even if the teachers themselves or staff don't know how to help, they know somebody that can. So if they come across a student that might need some extra support or help, both inside or outside the school, they know, hey, I can't help you, but I know who can. And I think it's important for them to know who that person is and when and how to get in contact with them. So this one, again, caught me by surprise and it's a little disheartening, to be honest with you guys. Next question is, I'm aware of the barriers that come with McKinney-Vento students. So this is, again, I was happy to see, for the most part, mostly agreed or strongly agreed, because, like I said, I've been working with homeless families and students for the last couple of years, and it's important for people, especially for the teachers and staff, to know that some of the issues that these students are dealing with, because it's difficult for these students, or for some of these students, to succeed in the classroom when they're dealing with so much outside of it. And then some of the, it's important to know some of the barriers that, if they know what's going on and what they're dealing with, maybe they can have, a little more empathy and be able to learn how to talk to them, or how to approach them, and how to help them in the classroom, so that help translates into better grades and hopefully higher graduation rates. I'm aware of how homeless impacts academic performance. Again, going back to what I just in the last slide, the students are dealing with so much outside of the school. It's hard for them to focus in the classroom, so it's important to know how these barriers are impacting their performance, so that way the students themselves or the teachers can help them in the classroom. Which, again, in the schools, at the end of the day, what really matters is the graduation rates, and that they're graduating and getting decent grades and stuff like that, which is important for both the students and the school overall. A school support / intervention would help McKinney-Vento students improve academically. Again, this one, no surprise. Everybody knows that the students have barriers and they need more help. And they agree that that these students do need more support, whether that's one-on-one counseling, that's group counseling, it's help with social-emotional or academics as well. They know that the students need the help, and they acknowledge that. And then what type of intervention would McKinney-Vento students benefit from the most? With the majority of, you guys can see, is the social skills and then study skills. Again, study skills, some of these students may be moving around or be in foster youth and might not have a quiet place to sit down and study. So having those study skills it's going to be important for them to learn how to make the most out of their time when they're, when they're so limited or it's hard for them to sit down and study. And then social skills. I thought it was interesting because, like I mentioned before, these students do have higher social emotional needs. So social skills and learning how to cope with their feelings and some of their emotions, especially as they're getting older. Because when they're young, you'll see them in tantrum. You'll see the behavior in tantrums and stuff like that. But when they're getting into those teenage years, that's when they get a little bit angrier and stuff like that, and those emotions are a little harder for them to learn how to cope with them. So a social skills group would really benefit these students. The McKinney-Vento students need additional support from school staff in order to have academic success. Again, the majority strongly agreed, 57%, and then agreed with 43%. So these teachers, the people that responded to my survey, see the need for additional support. Although the McKinney-Vento Act was, put in place over 30 years, from what I've seen and what I think most staff members would agree with is that it could be done a little bit better, or there's something else that needs to be tweaked so that it could have the full impact on the McKinney-Vento students. Some of the conclusions I saw from some of the responses was a higher percentage of participants, 57%, responded with agreeing that they were aware of McKinney-Vento was and how it supports the students. And then 28 strongly agreed. Again, so the people that responded, the school staff members, for the majority of them, they do know. They know what it is, and they have a good idea of what it does to help their students, both academically and social emotionally. Let's see, the question with the biggest disagreement response was when they were asked if they knew who the students under the McKinney-Vento Act were. And again, this to me was the biggest thing that I saw was maybe the biggest barrier between the McKinney-Vento Act itself and the school staff, was that the teachers don't know who these students are. And I'm not sure if it's because it's something that's because of the Privacy Act and stuff like that. But to me, if the teachers and school staff know who the students are, then they're able to help them out a little bit more, whether that's giving them a little bit extra attention, when a student seems like a little out of it, or they're having a hard time, or they're not coming to class, or they're coming to class late, or they're not getting the material, they're falling behind. To me, if the teachers know what's going on, for the most part at home, I think their job of trying to help the student out might be a little bit easier, a little more effective as well. Some of the implications for to think about, that I found after completing the paper, was that the goal of the McKinney-Vento Act is to address the challenges that homeless students have in enrolling, attending, succeeding schools, right? So it's important to help these students that are higher barrier needs to be a team effort. So like I mentioned before, it seems like for the most part, most of the, I don't want to say burden for lack of a better term, but most of the help comes from the school counselors and the homeless liaisons, which although two of them are two great resources in the school, they're not seeing the students, on a daily basis for the most part. The school counselors are there to support whenever they can, but they don't have eyes on the students every day like some of the teachers might have. And to me, that might be one of the biggest disconnects in the McKinney-Vento Act, is getting everybody to work together instead of individually having the school counselor or the homeless liaison work with that student whenever they get in trouble or whenever they need help outside of the school. I think it might be important for the teachers to be made aware of who these students are so they can help as well. So that way the school counselors can help with other things, the homeless liaison can help with other things as well. And things like, for example, in the classroom, for the most part of the school counselor and homeless liaison are helping with stuff outside of the classroom, but they're not, they're not there providing the tutoring and stuff like that. They might be able to help set them up for tutoring and stuff like that, but the teachers themselves who are teaching the subject might be able to help them out a little bit better if they know who they are. And I compared it to, some of the thoughts I had was having a system similar to that of a 504. It would really benefit the students, and it would provide them with academic support where each teacher is told if they have a McKinney-Vento student and have accommodations based on each student. So I would love to see something like the 504 plan implemented with McKinney-Vento students, where the 504 students are identified, and there's a meeting with with school staff, with the school psychologist, school counselor, the parents, the teachers, sometimes the students, to make sure that everybody's on the same plan. That hey, this student needs this level of support. Something like that with McKinney-Vento students, I think would go a long way. Instead of just having the school counselor or sometimes just even the school liaison just work with them, and only having meetings only when something really urgent comes up. I think something similar to a 504 plan with McKinney-Vento students would go a long way in really getting that McKinney-Vento Act to do a better job than what it's currently doing, and helping fill in some of those gaps. More communication between school liaison and school staff, along with more staff training regarding McKinney-Vento. Again, going back to some of the responses, like I said, I think the entire school staff needs to be made aware of who the homeless liaison and what the McKinney-Vento Act is in the beginning of the school year, so that way everybody going in, especially like new teachers who might not know what it is, so just training, just similar to other mandatory trainings that the staff have, like sorry, what's the program called? Help me out here. Mandated reporters, sorry. So like mandated reporter trainings, where, thank you audience, for training like that, just so the teachers and staff are made aware of like some of the signs that might be there, especially for students that haven't reported as being under the McKinney-Vento Act. And that would do it for my presentation. Thanks for coming. And yeah, thank you for coming.